With the news of Joe Biden's plan for a national coronavirus vaccine passport, libertarians are outraged, saying that this is a violation of our rights, that it's akin to an authoritarian regime demanding your papers if you want access to public services, and even some progressives, no joke, have pointed out it's a violation of our Fourth Amendment rights. Perhaps there are many progressives who realize that the Biden administration is not a left populist administration, and you give that government power, and, well, many of these people on the left view the Biden administration as right-wing. Naturally, they're not on board with this entirely. However, establishment Democrat types are absolutely on board with the idea that the government can mandate you have a mobile app that tracks your location and medical history. Some have even said, finally, this will break down the resistance and these anti-vaxxers will have no choice but to get the vaccine if they want to buy or sell, board a plane, go to a venue, or participate in any way. Which brings us to this story. Marjorie Taylor Greene, GOP rep. Many on the left have tried making her the new boogeyman, and it seems like they're going to continue doing it because in a recent video that Marjorie Taylor Greene put out, she asked a question. With this national passport vaccine, could this be Joe Biden's mark of the beast? In response, many on the left said the MAGA hat was clearly the mark of the beast. And what's funny about this is that the people on the left who are saying that about the MAGA hat clearly have not even Google searched Revelations or the specific passage that talks about what the mark of the beast is. You see, I didn't know this until someone sent us a super chat on the Timcast IRL podcast. The mark of the beast restricts you. Without the mark of the beast, you can't buy, sell, or trade, which is very interesting. And it brings me to the point Marjorie Taylor Greene brought up. She didn't say it was. She said, could this be? But of course, often people say, I'm just asking questions is a way to present an idea and try and feign responsibility for saying that idea. Now, I think it's a fine thing to point out. The COVID vaccine passport effectively will require you to have this tracking code if you would like to engage in commerce. So I think it's fair to liken it to a mark of the beast. But let's be honest. The mark of the beast has been brought up over and over again for a really, really long time. Now, there are real things we need to talk about when it comes to the vaccine passport, but I want to break down what the people on the left are saying about the mark of the beast. And there is a new and exciting conspiracy theory about this idea that, well, what's been going on the past few years has been fulfilling the prophecies in Revelations, and it may in fact be the end of days. Now, normally I don't care for much of this stuff, but with the vaccine passport thing and the left writing about Marjorie Taylor Greene, I did a couple Google searches, and sure enough, the Washington Post even had to write an article. I shouldn't say had to, but they wrote an article refuting the idea that we're in the end of days, because I guess a lot of people believe it. Let me just make it absolutely clear, my friends. I don't think we're in the end of days, but I do think it's sometimes fun to talk about these ideas and, in reality, debunk them. But it is fun, isn't it? Well, let's take a look at exactly what Marjorie Taylor Greene really said and what the left is saying. Before we do, head over to timcast.com, become a member. As a member, you'll get exclusive access to members-only segments from the Timcast IRL podcast, tons of really great conversations with Cassandra Fairbanks, Jeremy Hambley, Chrissy Mayer, comedian Kurt Schlichter. We have a ton of full-on segments. We've got hour-long bonus podcast episodes with people like James O'Keefe. You got to be a member if you want to get access to the stuff. But when you become a member, you're helping us expand our operations. We plan to do shows. We plan to do new podcasts, not even news or culture, just straight up regular old shows, entertainment, TV shows, movies, etc., because we want to build that culture and challenge the establishment in different ways, productive ways, and actually offer up something as a counter to what they're presenting. So go to timcast.com, become a member if you want to help us out. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Let's read this story from Uprocks. They say, wacky QAnon-loving rep Marjorie Taylor Greene's latest conspiracy theory is about vaccine passports and the mark of the beast. I want to be clear. Marjorie Taylor Greene did ask. She said, could this be, or something to that effect? Well, they're trying to make it seem like it's much more definitive. She didn't make it as definitive, but I'm not necessarily going to give her a free pass on this one. I get it. You're like basically calling it the mark of the beast. Uprock says QAnon-loving rep Marjorie Taylor Greene attempted to distance herself from her most infamous conspiracy theories, but not many people are buying it. She's been banished from congressional committees, and CrossFit has tellingly denied any affiliation with her because, yeah, that's totally self-explanatory. No one wants MTG to taint their brand with her rhetoric. Yet she persists with even more bonkers theories each day, including what she's ranting about in her crusade against vaccine passports. Greene's of the far-right opinion, it's a far-right opinion apparently, even though, yes, they're literal progressives who don't agree with this, but sure, up rocks, that vaccine passports shouldn't exist for a few reasons. They're steamed about certain states' voter ID laws and are creating a false equivalency between those laws and a supposed double standard with the mere idea of vaccine passports. I'm sorry. My understanding is that if you actually want to get a vaccine, I think CVS does this, you need an ID to do it. So you need your ID to get your vaccine so that your vaccine passport works. But in order to vote, you don't need that? Come on, that's a reality. They say, even more than that, Greene appears to be convinced that such a passport is actually, quote, Biden's mark of the beast. As wacky as it sounds, Greene's sticking with this argument. Quote, they are actually talking about people's ability to buy and sell linked to the vaccine passport, she tweeted. They might as well call it Biden's mark of the beast. She followed up with several more tweets, including her insistence that we will not comply with Biden's vaccine passports. The freshman congresswoman recorded a video to this effect and accused companies who require workers to be vaccinated of corporate communism. That is a very strange phrase, but I get the idea she's trying to say. And the left has called it corporate socialism for a long time. The idea that corporations get all this free access and guaranteed income and then oppress the workers. So why are they acting surprised that Marjorie Taylor Greene is using their language? Please spare me. They say Greene never seems to run out of energy. She's been tweeting on the subject all day. And to paste them all here would be redundant. But here's another silly leap in logic from her. She's somehow trying to paint pro-choice Democrats as evil because they want to drop my body, my choice while urging people to get vaccinated. This lady is the master of mixing and matching unrelated issues. Or maybe the writer at Uprocks just doesn't understand logic, I guess. Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeted, the same people that support killing other people in the womb, claiming my body, my choice, are the same people demanding you must have vaccine passports, and it's not your body or your choice. I understand the point she's trying to make. If it's my body, it should be my choice whether or not I put something in it. Now, I don't necessarily agree that that has anything to do with vaccine passports. I think vaccine passports, in the bigger picture, are more of a Fourth Amendment violation. There's also problems with several countries actually suspending the rollout of some vaccines because of fears over blood clots. There's also reports, or I should say advisory, to many people that if you are pregnant or food allergies, you also can't get the vaccine. So my personal opinion, I don't like the idea of having to go to a government app or something like that in order to get access to public services, because we all need to be treated equal under the law. Some people can't get the vaccine for a variety of reasons, and you can't restrict access based on that fact. The counter, well, they're offering up another provision in the vaccine passport that you need only test negative for coronavirus. Once again, this is going to put a requirement on people that might not have the resources. And interestingly, check this out. The Conversation reports a COVID vaccine passport may further disadvantage refugees and asylum seekers. I'm just going to say it. The vaccine passport, by the logic of the woke, is racist. Okay, fine. Maybe they don't agree with the voter ID thing. Maybe they're like, that doesn't make sense. The COVID passport is about safety and security. Okay. Well, I'll use the exact same arguments that you used about voter ID. Many of these people aren't going to know how to find a vaccination center. They're not going to know how to download the app. They're going to struggle with it. And those of means will have no problem. People will show them how to do everything, and you will create a caste system. It's that simple, isn't it? Well, let's talk about Revelations real quick, because I do find this really, really interesting. So I simply pulled up BibleGateway.com, okay, because Marjorie Taylor Greene says, could this be Joe Biden's mark of the beast? And they say, the beast out at sea. The dragon stood on the shore of the sea, and I saw a beast coming out of the sea. It had 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 crowns on its horns, and on each head a blasphemous name. All right, I won't read everything, but I'll read you the last most important point. They say, it also forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hands or on their foreheads, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the person who has insight calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. That number is 666. I got to be honest. People like to look into text and find the pattern and make it fit where it might not actually fit. I will point out, however, I was not aware of this. And I went to a Catholic school for quite some time. Up until I completed 5th grade, I was in Catholic school, went to 6th grade at public school. And I did not know that according to I believe this is Revelation 13, 17 specifically, that you would need the mark of the beast on your right hand or forehead in order to buy or sell. That to me was really weird. It's like an awfully specific thing to be in the Bible. Well, sure enough, that's the accusation we're hearing now, which brings me to the more important point about COVID vaccines. It will not be the government enforcing this. It will be the private sector. CBS News reports White House leaves vaccine passports to private sector. They say, as more and more countries like Japan, China, and Denmark plan to introduce vaccine passports for their citizens, Americans are beginning to wonder if they too will have to show some sort of proof of vaccination or similar ID to travel, attend events, work, or generally participate in society. It's not a violation of your constitutional rights when it is large monopolistic corporations that are demanding it. Which is why I've never been a laissez-faire capitalist, because they absolutely will violate your rights under the pretext that we're a private business. We can do whatever we want. No, I think we need some kind of regulations to prevent this and to guarantee our rights as citizens. Look, I think if you can get the vaccine, get the vaccine. I think you should talk to your doctor first, because there have been some complications. There have been these stories, and many countries in the European Union suspended the rollout of one of the vaccines because of blood clotting, but ultimately decided that the vaccine was more beneficial than it was detrimental. It's your decision, okay? This is the problem. In my opinion, you talk to your doctor, they tell you what's right for you. There are risks according to some of these stories, but it is fair to say that the benefits outweigh the risks when you look at it mathematically. But we don't treat people based on statistics and formulas. We treat them as individuals. If a person says, I don't want to take the risk, then what do? Deny them their right to participate in society? Now you're getting too cult-like for me. I would love if everyone got vaccinated. I mention this all the time. I got tons of vaccines when I traveled around, and I even had a vaccine passport that I had to show when I was going to some countries. These things have existed for a long time. Internally, however, a company demanding that you get a vaccine passport, I don't know, man. You might not say it's a violation of people's Fourth Amendment rights, but why should I let some Silicon Valley company have access to my private data and my medical history in order to go shopping at some store? The challenge, I guess, is that maybe movie theaters and airlines will mandate this and people will just comply. It's social enforcement. CBS says there aren't many answers to this in the U.S., although the U.S. has vaccinated more people than any nation in the world. But the Biden administration is making one thing clear. The federal government won't be the one issuing a vaccine credential or storing citizens' vaccination information in a database. That's a good thing. That's good. We don't want the government doing this. We have to be careful now what private companies do. All that matters is this. If people choose to accept vaccine passports and vaccination, then and the businesses allow them to do the vaccine passports, it will become normal. And there's nothing anyone else could do about it, because that's just it. Social enforcement is substantially more powerful than government censorship any day of the week. Now, whether or not people will actually support it, we'll see. Maybe many people will just be like, then I won't go shop at your store and I'll order online. Maybe. Honestly, I don't know. But I do find it very interesting with the government saying it'll be in the private sector and the general idea being you can't buy or sell unless you have this app. Well, then it kind of does sound like a mark of the beast, doesn't it? Okay. Here's what they say. Quote, this is going to hit all parts of society, and so naturally the government is involved. Andy Slavitt, acting director of the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, said during a White House COVID-19 briefing. But unlike other parts of the world, the government here is not viewing its role as the place to create a passport, nor a place to hold the data of citizens. We view this as something that the private sector is doing and will do. What's important to us, and what's important to us, and we're leading an interagency process right now to go through these details, are that at some point criteria will be met with these credentials. Should private entities develop a vaccine ID system, it will be crucial to ensure that access to credentials is equitable and accessible, no matter what technology limitations a person faces at home. said Slavitt and White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, adding that it should also be private and secure. Psaki said the Biden administration is mostly focused on creating guidelines that can be used as a basis for private sector endeavors. Quote, we expect, as Andy Slavitt, I think, alluded to, that a determination or development of a vaccine passport, or whatever you want to call it, will be driven by the private sector. Ours will be more focused on guidelines that can be used as a basis. There are a couple of key principles that we are working from. One is that there will be no centralized universal federal vaccinations database and no federal mandate requiring everyone to obtain a single vaccination credential. Second, we want to encourage an open marketplace with a variety of private sector companies and nonprofit coalitions developing solutions. And third, we want to drive the market towards meeting public interest goals. Psaki offered no timeline for when the administration might issue such guidelines. I don't know if it's actually going to happen. I know New York has the app, but there are some serious questions about, I believe it's the Americans with Disabilities Act. If you have allergies and your doctor advises you, you're young, you're healthy, you're not facing, you're not in any of these risk categories, and there are potential side effects with the vaccine, don't get it. How can you be barred from going shopping or go to the movies then? If the doctor says not to do it, or if you have food allergies and you literally can't get it. The other issue, I guess, is some people can't afford phones. It's a reality. And I'm not going to be like the Democrats and say it's all minorities. No, a lot of poor white people don't have smartphones. So how will they get this app? They won't. They'll have to get some kind of paper credential, I guess. But then what happens when people just start forging them? You see the problems? I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying it does seem unlikely. Now, as for the mark of the beast thing, I would like to point this out. On August 2nd, 2017, the Des Moines Register published an opinion piece. Implanted microchip, harmless or mark of the beast? Come on. We get this mark of the beast thing all the time. I remember in the past couple decades, as I'm growing up a teenager, reading wacky stories on the internet and just crazy conspiracies because it was fun. There were many different allusions to the mark of the beast. This idea that people would get barcodes they could have so they could scan it into a database and it would be easy to shop. Or that the NFC chip in phones would allow you to scan your phone so that you could buy or sell. They said that could be the mark of the beast, because eventually when every private sector company only accepts near field communication technology, then you have to have it. Then it was the microchips, which did not take off because it was an absurd idea to begin with. This idea that they would inject a microchip into your hand so you can wave. What are they called? They're RFID chips, radio frequency identification. I'm not going to go to the store and get a chip implant. I'm sorry, I'm not going to a business to do that. That's stupid. Phones make sense, though. Phones are convenient. They're fun. You can watch movies. You're entertained. You can communicate. You can go on the internet. Now, all that technology is in the palm of your hand and everybody has it. But once again, let me just stress, Revelation said it would be a mark on your right hand or your forehead. I suppose technically it could be on your left hand, but it's not a mark. The phone is not a mark. I suppose they're referring to the QR code. That's not on your forehead either. A bunch of leftists came out and they were claiming that MAGA hats were the mark of the beast. Okay. That's just their silly misunderstanding of the mark of the beast is, because quite honestly, if you wear the MAGA hat, you're less likely to be able to buy and sell. You wear the MAGA hat, you walk into the wrong business, someone's going to kick you out. For real. They might even beat you up, because we've seen a bunch of stories like this. Now, most places, regular people will leave you alone and nobody cares. But certainly the MAGA hat is not the mark of the beast. That's stupid. Many on the left tried claiming that Donald Trump was the false prophet. Look, I love these ideas and I think they're silly. Check this out. We have this from Wikipedia. Revelation 12 sign prophecy is an apocalyptic belief that an astronomical alignment on September 23rd, 2017 fulfilled the first two verses of Revelation 12. This date coincided with the autumnal equinox and the end of the Catholic September Ember Days. This theory, promoted by some Christians and Christian news organizations, proposed that a literal fulfillment of the prophecy made in the book of Revelations occurred on this date over Jerusalem. They also go on to mention that Donald Trump, Donald Trump's moving the embassy to Jerusalem fulfills more prophecies. They say Revelation 12:6 describes a consequent duration of 1,260 days that ended on the 6th of March, 2021, with Jesus remaining absent. This is a big, long, there's media attention. Look at this. The Revelation 12 sign has received media attention, including from the Washington Post, the Boston Globe, and the Catholic Astronomer. A number of critics have offered rebuttals of the purported sign, arguing that the sign is not unique or is only astrology? Critics include Answers in Genesis author Dr. Danny Faulkner, Christian author Joel Richardson, Jen Markle from Olive Tree Ministries, Christian Bible prophecy author Craig C. White, Christian blogger and author Tim McHyde. Okay. We get it. Some people are saying this. This is from the MarshallIndependent.com, a NewsGuard certified source, because I like to have NewsGuard certified sources, and they say this website mostly adheres to the basic standards of credibility and transparency, a network of local newspapers based primarily in smaller U.S. cities, owned by publisher Ogden Newspaper. The site offers a mix of local, state, national, and world news with a score of 80 out of 10. And they say, Revelation is unfolding right before us. Great. I'm sure it generated a lot of interest. It was interesting to read because sometimes it's fun to read about these bigger stories and look for patterns. But I'm sorry, guys. I don't think it's the end of days. I think we are facing a very serious period of tumult. But if you look at Strauss-Howe generational theory, it's just part of an ongoing cycle of upheaval that we face here in this country and many other countries face as well. I'm not saying Strauss-Howe generational theory is 100% accurate, but it's more likely, in my opinion, that we go through periods of upheaval than it is that the world is ending. Because even if humanity struggles or we go through a period of upheaval or war or conflict, the world carries on and civilization will likely persist for quite some time. They want to say, whether you like President Trump or not, he has already fulfilled one of the last prophecies in the Bible prior to Jesus' return. Moving the U.S. Embassy in Israel back to Jerusalem and recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel is one of the prophecies that must be fulfilled. No other president in history has done this, but Donald Trump did. Okay, it's a letter to the editor that someone wrote and they published. I certainly find it fun and interesting, but I think that's all it really is. Fun and interesting, not legitimate. However, the Washington Post decided to write up the story. This is not the end of the world, according to Christians who study the end of the world. Listen, the vaccine passport may come soon. New York has already done it. Many countries have already done it. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to be mad about it. It's going to be another big political battle. And we go through these periods. We have seen the rise of authoritarianism in many different countries. While I certainly think vaccines are great, I encourage you to talk to your doctor. And if it's your doctor says you should get the vaccine, you probably should. And once enough people get the vaccine, herd immunity, and then back to normal. So they say. Sounds like a great thing to me. We are all longing to just go back to, going to the mall, going to the movies, having a good time. I'm not entirely convinced that will happen because there's already a new normal. But I do think people might be pushing a little bit too far with the world is ending thing. The Washington Post writes, and this is just from 1 year ago, Chuck Pierce's son was concerned, like a lot of people, looking out on a world of ransacked grocery stores and canceled sports seasons and eerie lines of people standing 6 feet apart from one another. So he asked his dad, is this the end of the world? That's a question you can ask when you have a dad who calls himself an apostolic prophet, however you pronounce it, and leads a prophetic ministry. No, said Pierce. The Lord's shown me through 2026, so I know this isn't the end time. They say, it sure might feel apocalyptic, but not if you ask Christian writers and pastors who have spent years focusing their message on the book of Revelation, the New Testament's final book. It lays out a lurid, poetic vision of the end times, in which many evangelical leaders interpret it to mean that Jesus will return to earth, believers will be raptured to heaven, and those left behind will suffer 7 dreadful years of calamities. Most of these Revelation-focused prophesiers don't see coronavirus as heralding the second coming and the end of life on earth as we know it. Quote, if a person were just completely ignorant about what the Bible says about the end times, they may think this right now. This is it, said Jeff Kinley, a writer of books on biblical prophecy who lives in Harrison, Arkansas. Kinley said he understands why Americans might see this time of fast encroaching disease, isolation from loved ones, and crashing stock markets as apocalyptic. Americans are primed to believe the end of the world might arrive any day now. In 2010, 41% told Pew Research Center that they expected Jesus to return by 2050. Kinley pointed to Revelation 6:8, which forecasts death all over the globe by sword, famine, and plague. And Jesus' words about the events before the end times in Luke 21:11. There will be great earthquakes, famines, and pestilences in various places, and fearful events and great signs from heaven. I think he's referring to a future time. I don't think this is an actual fulfillment of that. Or maybe, let's be real. I'm not a religious person. I'm not very much into the Bible. But I think it's funny that they just easily dismiss this, saying it's probably something else. Maybe you assume too much. There have been earthquakes. There's been famine. There's been pestilence. And maybe you're looking for something bigger than it really is. I just want to tell you this. Again, I'll stress. I don't think the world is ending, guys. Sorry. Just keep working, having fun with your family and making money and go about your business. I do think the conversations are fun and interesting. But when it comes to the news, when it comes to civil war, when it comes to revolution, I've personally seen some of these things. I can tell you, people always expect it to feel and be bigger than it really is, probably because of movies, because of storytelling. It's not the case. I've witnessed civil unrest, separatism, revolutions, and I got to tell you, sometimes quite boring. I've been to many of these places where we have seen some of the biggest stories of the past decade or longer. I was in Ferguson during the riots, the Michael Brown riots. And you know what's funny? Someone pointed out, when you watch the news, they make it seem like the entirety of St. Louis is burning to the ground, when in fact, it's a quarter of a mile on one block in a suburb. It's true. In Egypt, for instance, you could walk a few blocks away from the revolution in Tahrir Square and go to McDonald's, have a burger, and watch a game of football, international football, for Americans, soccer. It was like nothing was happening. You can go to Heliopolis. That's what I did. Went to the mall and went shopping and had kebab and seemed like everything was normal. But a revolution was currently taking place. Everyone expects some big, massive moment. And I'm sorry, sometimes it just isn't all that big or massive. Sometimes we don't go out with a bang, but with a whimper. So when I talk about things like civil war, the problem most people have, and they're like, Tim, why are you talking about this? Is because they assume you're going to see people storming battlefields. It may just be slower and more boring than you realize. The American Revolution took 20 years. The Civil War took several years as well. These battles didn't just occur all at the same time with people screaming and everything burning to the ground. No, it took a long time. I think like the amount of time that passed from, say, like the Boston Tea Party, the Boston Massacre, to the actual Declaration of Independence was like a decade or something like that. Seriously, imagine that, 10 years. Imagine it's 2010 and you're like, I'm upset about Wall Street. So you have an Occupy Wall Street protest. And then 15 years later, so we're still about, 5 years out, you get some crazy midterm election that changes everything. And then when they write the history about it, they're going to be like, the great Occupy protest denouncing the financial sector was what precipitated, these major upheavals in government. And then they declared the Financial Investments Act. And then when you actually look, you're like, dude, that was 15 years later. Like for us living it, I've got more memories about, riding my mountain bike down a trail than I do about any real major conflict. People think it's going to be bigger and crazier than it really is. Now, let's get back to Earth for a second. Sorry, I just thought this was a fun story to talk about. Let's get back to Earth. Breaking news from Euronews.com. Again, NewsGuard certified source. They say, Berlin suspends use of AstraZeneca COVID vaccine for under 60s. They're concerned about reports of blood clots. We're hearing the same thing coming out of Canada. Canada pauses AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine for people under 55. And many other countries in the EU suspended this, but decided the vaccine benefits outweigh the risks. These are things you should know. And rational adults will have a real conversation about. Don't take my word for it ever. Talk to your doctor. Check with the CDC and the government, because I can't tell you what's right for you. I can only say this. A large amount of people have gotten these vaccines and they're overwhelmingly fine. But you look to the media, and I want to remind all of you, the media's goal is to scare you and to generate viral articles. If you get 100,000 people vaccinated and there's 10 people who got sick, the media will make sure it's the only thing you hear about because it gets them clicks. Now, I think there are serious risks. These countries are taking it seriously. Your doctor will tell you what's right for you, period. And you know what? I got to be honest. Euro News, NewsGuard certified. Okay, still talk to your doctor because your doctor knows what's right for you. That's the most important thing. The reality is there are concerns about the vaccine, at least the AstraZeneca one. There's several others. Some people are concerned that it's an mRNA vaccine. I'm not a fan of it. Guys, I believe one of them, Moderna, or maybe Johnson & Johnson, again, check with your doctor, is a traditional vaccine. There's a bunch of different ones available. Now, you want to wait for FDA approval. That I respect. There's some counterindications or warnings for people with food allergies or people who are pregnant. That I totally understand. So I got to ask your doctor. I'll tell you what's right for you. I believe in a rational society. We would point out there are concerns. Canada, many European Union countries have done this. That's why you need to get sound medical advice from your medical professional who are there to protect you. And I've had family and friends, and I've heard these stories from them about some of the adverse reactions they've had and having to go to the doctor. One even went to the ER, and they're fine now. That's why you need to know about these things so you can make informed decisions. Does this mean the world is ending? It doesn't. Sorry. Is it the mark of the beast? No, I don't think it is. Many people were saying that the Vera chip was going to be something like that. I think it's people in media. They see it, they see patterns, and they bring it up. I will point out, to be fair, though, the Vera chip thing was like an experimental technology that didn't really catch on all that much. The COVID passport thing is something that people are demanding the private sector actually implement. There was talk a while ago about Ticketmaster putting your vaccine status on your ticket. That I'm not a fan of. I don't want the private companies to have all my private information. And you know what? The problem is we're already there. I'll tell you this. I don't think we actually need vaccine passports. You know why? Because Facebook already tracks your location. Your phone already tracks your location. They already know if you've been around sick people. And it's funny that we're having this conversation around whether or not we should do contact tracing when Facebook already does. So you've got all these people talking about the vaccine passports, the end of days, it's the apocalypse, it's the authoritarian rise. And I'm like, bro, you've already given up all this data, okay? You've already given up your private information. They've got it. They've got everything. They've got every email you've ever sent. They can scan and read your emails. And you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if they do. They can deny it all they want. They read your messages. Facebook will ban a message from you to a friend. Twitter actually barred people from sharing stories. It's happening. This is just them saying it to your face. And then a bunch of people are like, I reject this. Dude, no, you don't. You've been engaged in this for like 5 to 7 years already. So what do we need to do? I think we want to reject authoritarianism and a violation of our rights. But I can't give you all the answers, man. I got to be honest. I don't have all the answers. I'm not going to tell you what's right for you. You make those choices for yourself. Do the best you can to get by. And in the end, I'll just hope for the best and I'll stand up for liberty, small L libertarianism, this idea that we are the individual, we must be protected as individuals. But I also think at a certain point, we do have to come together as a nation, as a collective, and as a human race to improve the lives of everybody else. We must make some sacrifices. I'm not saying for vaccine passports, for the greater good. The issue is that when we don't trust each other and we think we're being taken advantage of, and that's where we're at right now, and that's dangerous. We need to find a way to come together. I hope we can. In the meantime, maybe the world isn't ending, but who am I to say? I'm not a prophet. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up tonight at youtube.com/TimCastIRL. It is our live podcast show. Come hang out. You can send in your super chats and we read them on the show. And we'll see you all then at 8 p.m. Once again, thanks for hanging out. youtube.com/TimCastIRL, 8 p.m.